The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit genetec.com. That's GENETEC.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to episode 23 of the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. On today's show, we're joined by Chris Snyder, former Chief of Police and current Manager of Security Specialized Services at UHealth in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is the first part of our Making Your Security Program Invaluable series. Chris, among other things, will discuss rebranding, department growth, training, and career pathing. Remember to connect with the Healthcare Security Cast on social media for updates, contests, giveaways, and more. We have both a Facebook and a LinkedIn group, both under the name the Healthcare Security Cast Community. You can also subscribe for email updates by visiting our website, Hamilton.com/podcast. Also, feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And now, let's get into today's show. Today, I'm joined by Chris Snyder. Chris, thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
I always like to start off by learning about our guest. So I'm going to ask you the loaded question. Who is Chris Snyder?
Loaded indeed, right? Well, I'm a retired law enforcement officer. I was with the South Salt Lake Police Department in Utah for 23 years. I started at the age of 21. I was fortunate enough to climb through the ranks of my own organization. And my last 7 years, I was the chief of police there. So I had some great opportunities to help kind of craft what policing was for our community, and learned a lot about it. A lot of different disciplines that I think were fantastic for me to translate as I moved on. I did retire in January of 2014. Just kind of felt like it was time for me to try something new, and that led to about a 5-year retirement. And did a little bit of consulting and a little bit of teaching, but I just kind of didn't want anything to do with that profession anymore. And then, it was November of 2018, I had an opportunity to join the University of Utah Department of Public Safety as part of the Health Network security team. So I went on board as a training coordinator and looked at some systems improvement. The manager at the time, was now the director, was trying to make some big changes there internally, as well as fostering those relationships with the nursing staff and the non-clinical side of things. And we were able to get quite a lot accomplished. And just recently, I've been kind of bumped up again to a manager position over what we call our specialized services team. So that includes our risk assessments, our training, which is not only internal training for our security professionals, but also our external outreach. So we partner with nursing education, and we provide some workplace violence training for our hospital staff as well. So it's been a very rewarding transition and a great transition for me, actually. There's a lot of the skill set and things that I learned in law enforcement really relate to what we're doing in healthcare.
Excellent. And being someone who transitioned from law enforcement, how did you find that your previous experience was either beneficial or translated well to the healthcare environment?
For me, as my primary function initially was to be a trainer, it was having that connection with my audience, and that was primarily nursing staff. One thing that first responders have in common, whether you're military, police, fire, EMS, or even our nurses, is we just see people at their worst and we deal with them in crisis. And so there's a bond there and a nexus that connection really helps. And the other side of it was just understanding. Well, I guess it was a lack of understanding moving into the profession that behavior was mind-boggling to me. Someone asked me what it was like to work at the hospital, and I said it was kind of like going to Las Vegas. And they said, "Well, Chris, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, perfectly responsible and reasonable adults step off a plane in Las Vegas and think they can do whatever they want to without any repercussions at all." And we see that in the hospital sometimes. And it was really kind of diving deep into why do people behave this way or think that they can in that healthcare setting. So it was really interesting to kind of correlate that to my experience on the street and dealing with the same tactics that we use in de-escalation and even personal safety, and being able to kind of share that with my fellow nurses that are working there, and even the non-clinical staff that sometimes we have a tendency to forget about, but we really prioritize educating them as well.
Right. And actually, that's a great analogy, the Vegas analogy. I've never heard it quite put that way, but makes perfect sense.
Yeah, a big message for me when we train is that not all people that act out and display bad behavior are bad people. Sometimes very good people just don't have coping mechanisms, and they don't know how to deal with stress and anxiety and fear, especially in these times. And really, no one wants to be at the hospital. They're there to get bad news likely, or they're not feeling well. And it's really having that empathic approach to understanding, what's driving this person's behavior, and what can we do to really help them.
Absolutely. Now, just given the path that your career has taken, just looking at your experience in law enforcement and working in the hospital, I'm sure you must have had some mentors who helped you along the way. So I'd just like to ask, who are your mentors, and what have you learned from them that you still apply today?
I have a few. I'll talk about two of them specifically. And one was very early on. It was a graveyard sergeant of mine named Van Midgley. And while he was working the road, I was a rookie officer. He was putting himself through law school. And he ended up leaving our police department with his law degree and became a very successful city attorney for a large city in that Salt Lake County area. And he just always told me to, really strive to improve and educate, whether that was formal education or just job experience, and really know everything is, as much as you can possibly know about doing that job and being prepared. So I kind of call that being technically proficient as well as being tactically proficient. And that's having that confidence to do that job. And then my other mentor was also at South Lake Police Department. He was a lieutenant who ended up retiring. He became a city council person and eventually became our mayor. And he's the one that offered me the opportunity to be the chief of police. And two things he said to me that were so important. One that works for me as an instructor and a trainer is to know your audience, really understand and research your audience and speak their language. Because if you don't speak their language, you're not going to connect with them. And the other thing was he was so good about dealing with people with compassion and empathy, showing compassion for others, and trying to understand what they're going through. Really helped me learn how to be patient when dealing with a lot of high stress situations and a lot of difficult people throughout my career. And those two lessons for me were just crucial for me to have success throughout my career.
Excellent. And on the Healthcare Security Cast right now, I'm just putting together a series of episodes focusing on making your security department invaluable. And it seems like the team that you're a part of has been able to embed themselves in the hospital. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of your team over the last few years?
Yeah, it's I'll go back about 2.5 years. So we're part of the University of Utah Department of Public Safety. You've got your sworn law enforcement side, then you have campus security and healthcare security. And really at the time, I think about June of 18, healthcare security had about 35, 36 staff members. And really, I don't think there was a partnership there. And a couple of incidents happened where I think on the hospital side of things, they wanted to have something that was a little bit more robust and more of a partnership with their security team. And that's when my director was recruited. He's retired law enforcement also by the name of Glenn Smith. And he kind of went in to assess and see what he could do to improve the systems and really get things going on the right track. He had a strategic plan in mind, and it was, a multifaceted effort. And for him, it was about building a team of people that he could really rely on that could come in and get the job done. So he made a concerted effort to recruit a lot of retired law enforcement and also gave some of the existing security staff opportunities for advancement and having a say in what's going to work going forward. And what that's evolved into now is, our approach is really multifaceted, and from the side that today we are allocated, I believe, for about 103 or 104 officers. So we've definitely grown in size in a short amount of time. We have a security investigations unit, which are plainclothes. They wear suits and ties, but they deal with the long-term case management for disruptive individuals. They also follow up on another program we have called BERT, which is our Behavioral Emergency Response Team. I know there are different variations of that globally, but that's where we partner with our, social work and our clinical staff to deal with, emergent situations. We also have our Uniform Patrol Division, and then with my team, it's really, we brought in a principle that was very popular in law enforcement, still is, called crime prevention through environmental design, and we applied that to the hospital setting. So we do site surveys and risk assessments from ambulatory clinics all the way down to individual workspaces. We assessed pharmacy setups. My risk assessment team they're at the table with architects and managers talking about plans, looking at blueprints, where we want secure, where do we want cameras, how do we like, the way this desk faces, or anything that we can to enhance that feeling of safety and reduce risk for staff. And then the other component was the training, not only to look at where we were internally, where do we want to be, what standards do we want, where we want to, what do we want to accomplish, but also that at outreach to our nursing partners. We co-instruct with our clinical staff education partners and the BERT training. And so that's been, invaluable to have security and nursing side by side, talking about safety, de-escalation, and when to activate that team. And then the workplace violence training has just been essential, right from the warning signs and red flags of escalating behavior to how do you de-escalate, verbally, how do you keep yourself safe, when do you call for help. We're very fortunate at UHealth that they have a zero tolerance policy towards workplace violence, and they're very serious about keeping their employees safe.
Right, excellent. You brought up a couple of points that I actually want to dive into a little bit more, specifically the Septet and the training. Now, when you guys were completing those initial Septet audits, was there anything that stood out that you remember as that was kind of a major shift in how you do things?
I think the biggest thing we saw was just the lack of foresight on the planning side. What security professionals bring in, especially those with a law enforcement background, because we do have a pretty strong cadre of retired law enforcement now, is a different perspective. As much as a clinician can go in and diagnose a medical problem, the things that we see are based right around safety and security, and things that jump out to us are maybe fly under the radar for someone else who doesn't have that experience or that background or that training. And what's fascinating is when you bring those things to their attention, it's the immediate light bulb, like, oh my gosh, you're right. I didn't even think about that, or that would be fantastic. And to be able to have a seat at the table now and be involved in those plans is essential. And that's even evolved to, so many different areas of the hospital, especially now the planning surrounded COVID-19 and what we're dealing with when it comes to access to the hospital, visitor policies, wellness screening, things of that nature. We've been partners all along the way talking about how do we do that safely for not only our staff, but our patients and our visitors.
All right. And the second piece I wanted to touch on with you a little bit more is training. So kind of a two-part question here. So I'll ask first about your team, and then I'll ask about the clinical staff. But specifically, what does the training package look like for one of your security personnel? Like what's involved, and how much training are they generally getting? How long does it take for them to get trained?
Well, so for one thing, we hire at 18 years of age. Our security team is unarmed. We've looked at our recruitment of how do we get quality people in here, and we had to go away from trying to recruit people that had specific security experience to we look for good common sense and decision making. One of my favorite officers is a young man by the name of Jordy, and he didn't really have any background in security, but I asked him, I said, Jordy, what, experience do you have dealing with disruptive people, bad behavior? Someone's in your face yelling at you. And his reply was, well, I'm a youth soccer referee. And I'm like, well, you're hired, because that's what he's dealing with, is angry parents all the time. So we look for good common sense, good decision making, customer service. And one of our recruitment avenues also is with our law enforcement explorer groups, young adults that want to pursue that career in law enforcement. We offer a lot in regards to, I guess, job skills, resume building, interview skills. We help them package themselves to become very marketable to those law enforcement agencies that they're applying to. When they start with us, they get 5 weeks of training. We have a pretty intensive, field training program that runs the gamut. We also offer 2 certifications. One is nonviolent crisis intervention through CPI, which I know a lot of your listeners are familiar with. And then we also certify in healthcare defensive tactics system as well, with a big focus on, verbalization and proper escort techniques and contact and cover, enhancing their safety. And then the usual, customer service, report writing. We try to model somewhat after a law enforcement agency when it comes to, our SOPs and how we train, and those expectations there as we start to assign officers out to different areas that haven't had our team before. So there's obviously that growing period as well, but pretty robust training. Our next evolution and phase is, and we were getting there, was our annual in-service training. Being able to unplug officers for different times to do that refresher, which is so important. You can sit through a class and get certified in something, but if you don't apply those skills and practice those skills, you could lose them fairly quickly. So we have a big impetus moving forward of the retraining throughout the year, and not just doing a one-off and we'll see you in a couple of years type of thing.
That's great. Now, I guess the other side of that I want to ask about is with your staff outside of the security department that are part of the network. Obviously, you did touch on a little bit of the training that's offered through security. So what training are you offering exactly for staff outside of the security program? And how has it been received so far?
Well, so our primary presentation that we give is workplace violence prevention, and it centers around education as far as, what workplace violence is. There are a lot of, I guess, misperceptions about that. That I have to be physically assaulted to be a victim of workplace violence, but understanding the true definition, that includes verbal aggression and abuse, name calling, intimidation, bullying, sexual harassment, all of those things. And it doesn't have to just come from a patient, it could be a coworker as well. So we really strive to educate that. Our message is, it's not part of your job to take abuse, but you are at higher risk to be exposed to it because of the nature of our profession, and that we deal with people in crisis. And we encourage reporting and talk about, why it's traditionally underreported in the healthcare field. And it's that kind of that programming that, oh, it's just my job, I have to deal with it. And we're trying to change that paradigm to say no. And we understand that some people aren't responsible for their behavior. Maybe they have a TBI, or they're responding poorly to medication, but we still have a duty to keep people safe, and we can still provide care in those situations and keep an employee safe. And when we started pushing that training out, I was kind of like a traveling salesman, knocking on doors and taking 5 or 10 minutes of a staff meeting and whatever time someone would give me. And then once my presentation really is about 45 to 60 minutes long. And now it's before COVID hit, we were doing 3 to 4 presentations a week for different groups throughout the UHealth network, and really just pushing out that messaging there. And I guess our next transition, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, is we're moving to the Zoom platform. So we have a couple of trainings coming up that we're going to try and do the presentation via Zoom. I don't know if that's going to be the future, but obviously trying to, practice safe physical distancing and all that. But, now it's pretty well received. And then being able to partner with nursing. A lot of our curriculum is based on what we're trying to teach the BERT program, and really look at, those upcoming emergent issues. We had something recently that came up with forensic patients, and we're looking at applying some new training for clinical staff in regards to the LMS, and maybe some instructor-led training to enhance some safety and educate there as well. So it's pretty well rounded in regards to that. Just trying to get that out to the staff, and and to have that connection with the audience. Every class that we've taught has been very well received. In fact, I think my favorite class is, and it's evolved over the time I've been there, but I get 2 hours with first semester nursing students every spring and every fall. And we actually bring in professional actors, and we role play a scenario with an aggressive patient and a nurse, and we kind of debrief it, talk about it from a communication standpoint and de-escalation, and then a safety standpoint as well. Then we jump right into the workshop there, and that class has been fantastic actually for getting the word out very early on in somebody's career that you don't have to take that abuse. You're a higher risk for it, but it's not part of your job.
And yeah, you definitely spoke to workplace violence there, and it's obviously been a significant issue in our industry for a long time. Now, obviously, you guys have taken the zero tolerance approach, and I think that you have a personal vested interest in that. How's your organization enforcing the zero tolerance policy?
Well, again, everything is what I love about healthcare is there are so many different hands involved. It's multifaceted. So when it comes to that zero tolerance policy, it's all about the level of behavior and the threat level as well. It could be as low level as a verbal intervention, even from the nursing perspective, or involving security to come in, whether it's one of our uniformed officers or one of our SIU staff members to do that low level verbal intervention. If we escalate beyond there, we work with our customer service team to look at letters of expectations and really trying to hold a patient accountable, or even a visitor for that matter. There are times when the behavior is so egregious, or we just simply we're running out of options, that we may move towards possibly firing a patient and moving them out of the UHealth network or out of a particular facility. And that's when we involve our risk management team, obviously, our legal department as well, support services, to talk about what are our options there and how does that work. We're very fortunate to be part of a Department of Public Safety, and that we've got a good working relationship with our police department. They do staff in our emergency department full time, as well as having officers at the hospital on a regular basis, at the main hospital. So that's very important for us. And we're starting now to do a lot of outreach to our community clinics and making those connections with local law enforcement as well. And you mentioned that personal connection. My daughter Lacey is actually in Madison, Wisconsin right now. She's set to graduate a 12-month nursing program in August. She already has her bachelor's degree in health science and education from Chico State, and I'm excited for her to be a nurse. She's everything that I teach right now is very important to me. And I always tell that story that when she was, spent some time with me this summer before going to Madison, that I made her come up to the hospital and she had to sit through and audit a bunch of my classes because I wanted her to have that training and that skill set. And what I told her is, you got to have tools in the toolbox. If you're encountering a situation and it's a crisis situation, you're either going to underreact or overreact unless you've got something to rely upon, that foundation. Do they always work? No, but knowing that you've got some avenues to properly respond to something is so important.
Excellent. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about as well, because I know you're involved with the International Association for Healthcare Security and Safety, IAHSS. Like, I understand that you're a member. Is your team leveraging any of the resources that they have available?
Yes, actually, we lean very heavily on IAHSS, fantastic resources. We encourage all of our officers to go through that basic officer certification. And recently we've worked with our HR compensation team to kind of rebrand ourselves and really enhance our job descriptions. And one thing I always try and tell people, and this is part of my education piece, is our security professionals in healthcare are not security guards. They don't sit in parking lots. They're not guarding equipment, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's a different skill set required to be in that healthcare setting, which requires, a lot different set of training. They deal with disruptive individuals all the time, patients in crisis, visitors. I mean, just again, understanding what goes on inside a hospital on a regular basis, and the training and education is so important to that. But kind of rebranding away from, calling our team security officers. We have kind of a career ladder for them. So they come in as a healthcare security professional 1, and then they can move to a professional 2, which would correlate with the advanced officer certification that your organization offers. And then we have our supervisor and our manager level, and a lot of our job descriptions are based on the ability to obtain those advanced and supervisor certifications as well. So we really push heavily on that. A lot of the training that we do via our LMS program, whether it be report writing or patrol basics, we model that after IHSS, syllabus and objectives. So they're kind of getting educated from the same things that they're going to try and test and certify on, but we definitely want to keep things consistent within the profession. So it's been an incredible resource for us to just kind of lean on. And I tell you, the website is something that myself and a few of my team access on a regular basis, whether it be publications or some of the forums and asking questions and getting insight on, what are they doing over here? Or what are you doing over here? It's just having that network has been invaluable for us.
So you guys are doing a lot of great things at your hospital, it seems like. What can we expect in the future from UHealth?
Well, we're just growing so fast and I think that's we're trying to decide how are we going to stay on top of all this growth. There's a demand right now for our services throughout the network, and that's why we kind of moved away again from being just called University of Utah Hospital Security. We're more expanded now throughout the UHealth network. We provide security for our Huntsman Cancer Hospital and Research Facility. We moved into the University Neuropsychiatric Inpatient Facility about a year ago. And it's on tap that we're going to start moving out to some of our community clinics as well. Advantages, I think, are obvious of having, healthcare specific, trained and educated security professionals that are leading those teams and supporting our staff out there. And that's primarily our function, is to support our partners within the hospital. Coming up, telling our story, I think we've grown so fast. We get a lot of inquiries from other security teams throughout the country. In fact, my director Glenn Smith and our support services director Dustin Banks were selected to present this year at your annual conference. So I think they're going to talk about where we were 4 or 5 years ago and where we're at now and how we got there. So I encourage anybody that's attending that if they're interested, to jump in there, because there's a lot of lessons that we learned and a lot of things that worked, and so I think they're going to do a fantastic presentation there.
Oh, definitely looking forward to that. Now, in closing, what message would you like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
One thing for me was important again is our branding and how do we present ourselves and have a seat at that table. And that starts internally. So it's the messaging to our own officers that, hey, healthcare security don't view it as just a job. I mean, it's truly a career and a profession. In fact, we've had some of our younger folks that came in with the idea that they wanted to pursue something else. And several of them have said, you know what, I actually like working here and I see a future for myself here, because they're seeing tremendous opportunity, and growth and especially, again, having that career path is so important, giving them something to look forward to down the road, whether they can achieve that advanced certification and become a field training officer, or be given a collateral assignment such as officer in charge, or maybe they're part of our alarm audit team or part of the security investigations unit or the training unit, that we're just trying to expand those opportunities and really encourage them that, hey, we will support anyone that wants to move on and pursue a dream of whether it be a career in law enforcement. We've got several that want to join the fire service. But also, hey, this is not a bad gig for you. It's a good career. Obviously, the benefits are great, but the compensation, I think, is catching up to a lot of other things as profession-wise. And we try to create a very positive workplace, a very participative workplace where our staff feel empowered and supported to do their job. So that's a big thing for me. And then externally, it's so important that always focus on building those relationships. My director, Glenn, tells a story about when he first started up there and kind of the mindset in the past for security, and was, out of sight, out of mind. They were kind of that necessary thing. They had to be there, but there was no collaboration. And he had went on a walk with one of the leadership team at the time, and he said, "You ever stop by? Do you ever do rounding and stop by, a Huck desk and say, hey, how you doing? Do you need anything?" And the officer kind of looked at him and said, "Oh, well, why would I want to do that?" And again, it probably seems so simple to so many people, but there are some organizations that still operate that mindset of it's us versus them, and we're not a team. We may say we're a team on the website, but we don't function as a team, right? And he said, "Well, come with me." And Glenn didn't know anybody from anybody at the time, and went to a desk and talked to a charge nurse and said, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Glenn with security." He said, "How would you feel if we stopped by every once in a while to check in on you?" She said, "That would be awesome." And he looks at the officer and says, "That wasn't too hard, was it?" And so we really push that. You know what? Get to know your coworkers, establish those relationships, build them, and build that credibility and that trust. Because if you have the opportunity to be a part of the decision making and the problem solving, and rather than being just told, "Hey, this is how we want you to respond," it's a night and day difference to making things effective and making sure that things flow smoothly. And that's been our biggest asset is having good leadership that's really focused on the relationship aspect and really trying to take care of every discipline in that hospital. We provide training for nutrition services, for our pharmacist groups, for our valets, for customer service, for EVS. It's not just our nursing staff. We really, there's so many things that make a hospital function and work seamlessly. And it's a privilege to be a part of that team.
Excellent. And just actually, while you're speaking in terms of relationships, for anybody who's interested in connecting with you, obviously you're listed in the IAHSS member directory, and I was able to find you through that and a combination of that in LinkedIn. What's your preference if someone wants to connect with you?
I'm not a big Twitter guy. I do have a Twitter account, but I use it mostly just to keep tabs on certain things. So LinkedIn's probably the best way. And then also, I'm happy to provide my email. It's chris.snyder@dps.utah.edu. But either way, I love building those connections throughout the network, and I'm so grateful that you reached out to me because I think UHealth security has a lot to offer, and I know that there's a lot for us to learn from the other organizations as well. And that's what makes a successful moving forward. I still lean on some people that I've attended some certifications, with for advice or policies and things of that nature, or how did you implement this program? And it's just invaluable to have those connections and take advantage of those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm happy that I was able to connect with you, and I appreciate you taking the time. There's definitely a lot of good information in here. And I agree with you. UHealth does have a lot to offer. So it's always great to get those, the perceptions and perspectives from different folks.
Well, it's great, Brian. I really appreciate the opportunity again. I'm grateful for this chance, and I look forward to continuing the relationship.
Likewise. And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Join us next time when our guest is Sarah McVanel as we discuss recognizing our team and peers and the impact of doing so. Thanks again to our sponsors, 3D Network Technology and Genetech. Until next time, take care and stay safe.